by Apex Bank of Camden. 3 locations in Camden, Big Sandy and Brewston. Today's program after this.
For more than 85 years, Apex Bank of Camden has built a tradition of local people serving local people. Although there have been changes over the years, this one thing remains the same. Hometown people that are your friends serving you every day to meet your financial needs. We want to see you grow and prosper. And when you ever have a need, you'll get personal attention right here at home, not in some far-off corporate office. Number 1 in customer service. Apex Bank of Camden, Benton County's best bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
A very pleasant, good Saturday morning to you, everybody. Welcome to Operation 7570. Great to have you with us. So glad you're spending some of your Saturday morning with us today, whether you've joined us by WRJBradio.com, the old familiar radio, FM 95.9, up on Facebook Live this morning. Glad to have our listeners and our watchers, regardless of how you're getting our broadcast program today. Great to have you with us. And we have a longtime buddy, dear friend of ours. This is a program 60 years in the making, because this young man right here was with us back in the great days of the 60s into the early 70s. Great football teams. He's been a coach. He's been a businessman. He's a member of the Benton County Sports Hall of Fame. This is our longtime friend and colleague, Coach Tommy Richardson. Coach, welcome. I'm honored today, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Flash. So good to be with you this morning. It's been, I think, about 3 years since we were down before. We had a good time together and visiting, and I always like to get back, and glad to be with you this morning. Yes.
Well, it's great, and a little bit later on in the morning, you're going to be out at the granary for a program out there, and I think it's going to be a good crowd out there. Tell me what that's going to be about,
yes,
sir.
1 or 100 makes no difference. It will always be great to see who's there and make those connections from 60 years ago, as you're talking about, right through the basic years that I was here, and had some great players, great coaches, great following during this time that I was a Camden Lion and involved here in Camden with the team.
Well, let's go back, Coach. Let's go back to those days of growing up in the 50s and getting the job in Camden. What is your background, and how did that ultimately lead to you being a part of our great football programs back in the 60s, sir?
Well, I guess it goes back really. I was born in Linden, Tennessee, and they didn't have a football team. So my dad, mom moved us to Waverly, and that's where I played football from some great coaches there. And from there, I went to the University of Tennessee Martin, played football there, and then from there, I started coaching at Brewston. And I was over at Brewston with Cotton King. That name is familiar for a lot of us. Some might not remember. Cotton was there for a few years. Then I went down to Florida and coached a few years down there. Came back as a 26-year-old head coach for the Camden Lions 60 years ago. 64, 65 was the beginning years. 63 and 64 was the first year.
What was the culture like back in those days as we go back, coming up back from Florida back to Camden, Tennessee, Northwest Tennessee? What was the culture like in those days? And, that's changed in 6 decades, sir.
It has. It really has. And of course, I came out of a great program in Orlando, one of the largest high schools in Orlando, Florida, Boone High School. And I picked up, I steal a lot of good ideas around coaching and other things I do. And I picked up some great ideas, I think, about coaching that were not really in Tennessee or Indiana or anywhere in this area. So I was anxious to get on board here and build a program. We started slow. The first year or so wasn't that great. But interacting with players, I got a great group of coaches surrounded me at that time. And the sport of the city of Camden back then, the quarterback club is what we called it at that time. I don't know if the names have changed, but we had some great folks that stepped in and helped us build a program over those years. But culture changed. The whole culture, as you know, of football has changed through the years. Much more technical now. We look at film, we break down film, we do so many things. Back then, we didn't have that technology to be able to use. The whole aspects, and one of the things that I got really excited about is, the game is more than just the physical and the fundamentals. It's the mental game, and got certified as a sports psychologist, mental performance coach, and then add what I think the really critical is the spiritual nature of a player, the total player, not just a strong, fast, big type guy, but how do we develop the total individual? And that's the way that I think the culture has grown. through the years. So glad to be a part of that early stages.
I want to get back to that in just a moment, but as you were coming up through the ranks, as you were coming up into adolescence, early adulthood, were there mentors? Were there mentors in Tommy Richardson's life that influenced him in those early days?
Absolutely. Some of the, certainly, starting with my parents, my mom and my dad were great supporters. My dad was an athlete, football. He was a boxer, so we picked up some of that. And my mother was a coach. She coached in Linden and the girls basketball, so that kind of aspect was a great mentorship for me. And then the coaches that I've had through the years, they're just really a great part of my success that I've had through the years. Yes, and there's so many of them, I'd hate to go back and try to name them all, sure. But boy, that has been a great thing. One of the things that I promote with the youth is, and the adults and the parents, is a mentoring system. It is so important that particularly young athletes, they don't have to be an athlete, could be any aspect, need that someone to come alongside of them and support them and encourage them and lift them up, get them on the right path and help them through the years. So I'm very much a proponent of the mentoring, and we do that with our program in Zionsville. We try to hook the kids up, the younger kid with the older kid, and try to develop that mentorship.
And I know you mentioned Perry County basketball for a long time, the only game in town over at Perry County, but down through the years they've had some tremendous basketball teams that I know you've kept up with up in Indiana.
Yes. In fact, one of the stars from Perry County, Linden area we were talking about earlier, that was a great star from Indiana, as you know, and now, as you mentioned, is in state politics.
That's right. State representative over there, coached for a number of years and that sort of thing. Got many friends around here. But, Coach, a moment ago you mentioned the spiritual and the psychological aspects. How does that play in, or how important is that to a kid today, whether he or she's going to be an athlete or in business? How important is that for them to realize that is what they're going to do on the field?
Well, I think that's really the key, that you help them to identify, and I like the word, their identity. I am more than a football player. I'm more than a basketball player. I'm somebody's son, somebody's daughter. I'm a student. I'm a person of the community, and help them to strengthen and see themselves that being an athlete is a part of it. But there's much more to their life and later life than just playing football or basketball, because you can only do that so long, right? You got to be these other things, and develop the total athlete. The mind, the body, and the spirit is so critical, and I see so important. And I am a proponent of that. I've been teaching that for a number of years. I call it the 360-degree coach. You coach all aspects of the athlete, not just the physical. And as we do that, they move through different levels of their life, from going from their high school days or college days even into business world, and how to be a good employee, how to be a good leader, how to be a good parent, and all of those aspects are built into the total development, not just the physical development of the athlete. So that's very, very important. And I think that just creates the right kind of a young person to become an older person someday.
Well, of course, I don't care what the sport is now, but after the season is over with, you and the coaches, whatever sport it is, you're always looking forward to the next season. And you did back in your day. We understand that, Coach Richardson. But at what point did it develop, or at what point did sports become really what I call a season you work on 12 months out of the year then? Because I remember back in the day, you may just put up the gear, for a couple of months and come back out in the spring getting ready. But now it just seems like as soon as the last game is here, the next day, these coaches are out working for next year.
Right. It is. It used to be exactly that way, because back then, the early ages when I was playing, we had to work. There wasn't this opportunity to come back and spend time outside farming, outside of our work. We all had different jobs, and that was a part of it. But as we expanded, I think the first move was getting a lot of our athletes into the weightlifting and the bodybuilding, and the strength and the power and the speed needed was an early step. So that took some time, and then we worked into the other areas. But back, your question definitely, I think, is that it has changed. It is really sometimes a year-round. But one of the things that we encourage, and I've been a proponent of this, I like to see the athlete play more than one sport. You know, sometimes they'll go from one sport to a club sport to back to the regular sport to a club sport. I like to see that variety at the early years. Don't get so settled into one area because you learn something. We encourage our players, football players on our football team, to wrestle, to run track, to play basketball, to play baseball. We want the total development because they interact and help each other. They don't burn out as quick that way. You know, if I stay with one sport when I'm 4 years old all the way till I'm, 24, 25 years old in college, there's a tendency to burn out in that sport. But they learn so much from the other sports. We want them running and track, throwing. We want them involved in a lot of sports.
I was up on last night looking at the TSSAA website, and there are a lot of kids in all these high schools across the state of Tennessee who participate in multiple sports, more than just one sport. And we've got a girl right now, Emma Pierce, and I'll single her out. Great young lady, did well Thursday night in our championship game at Stewart County, but I think right now she is participating maybe in 5 sports out here: basketball, girls basketball, volleyball, softball,
right,
cross country and track. So, she's just an all-around player, and we got a lot of good kids like that.
Yes, that's a great sign. Of course, we always emphasize you got to get the academics. That's got to be first. That if I can participate in more than one sport and keep my grades up, keep academically strong, then that's the thing to do. Enjoy those other sports.
I was getting ready to ask you, that was one of my talking points, Coach, and I'll go into that right now.
Okay.
The kid has to be gifted on the field. He had to be gifted to play for you. Of course, he still does with what you're doing today in Indiana. Of course, he's got to be gifted. But before that young man could come on the field and play for Tommy Richardson and his coaches, what were the things he had to meet beyond that, just being talented on the field, the things, the criteria he had to meet?
Yeah. Right. Well, I think definitely the first thing, academically, I remember back right over here at the Camden High School, we checked those grades. We checked those, as coaches, we checked those grades. They probably got checked at home, but we wanted to make sure, and if they were behind, we wanted to encourage them. We wanted to talk to their teachers. What do they need to do and not doing? So I think that the first thing we have to do is make sure that they're getting the education. Second thing is, how do they handle themselves in the classroom? What is their ability to listen to the teacher, to be respectful, and to handle all of the characteristics. I think I call them characteristics, that they know how to handle themselves in every situation, the way that their parents would be proud of them, and certainly the way the coaches would be proud of them. So that's that building stage, that again, the total person, not just the athlete, that's important.
And those things that you taught 6 decades ago, those things are still you need to, those kids today, those kids need to keep that in mind in 2022.
Oh, absolutely. Look people in the eye, shake people's hands strongly, listen to people when they talk, be respectful. Okay, ask questions. It's just a whole process of growing through that. I think we have a chance as coaches at an early age to start to work on that. I think that's good we do that.
When you took over the reins of Camden High School football back in 63, 64, Coach Richardson, were the kids quick to buy into your philosophy as to what you wanted to bring to the program?
Well, some were, some were not. Of course, you always have a few. But who is this guy, 26 years old? He's not even, he's out of Florida. I don't know anything about him. Kind of a stranger in the place. But I think the key is to, as a coach, to get to know the people. I'm a big proponent of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I teach that with our athletes. But one of those key things to us being successful in anything we do is one of his habits. It says, seek first to understand. If I understand you as a coach, as an athlete, if I understand you, what's the situation? How are you here? What's your parents like? What do you study? What do you like? Those kind of things, you have a great opportunity to strengthen that young athlete in all areas. So they were not used to, I think, at that time, not disrespectful to any coaches before, because they just not had that experience. But how do we work on the mind? How do we get them to think positive and optimistic? How do we get them to be able to see and handle an adversity when it comes at them? We're not going to win them all. We know that. Do I win and learn from that? Not win and lose. We don't use that word lose. We win and learn. And if I didn't win, okay, I'm going to learn something, and I'm going to grow in the future. And those kind of things at an early age, I think, is some of the things that we can do to help to make them strong athletes. Some bought into that. Most of them did. But I had a great parent group, I think, that we worked on to help us interact with that. No coach does it alone. We got to have parents. We got to have support people. We got to have great assistant coaches. We got to have all of that things that make your culture of your program so important, and that's what we had here. And they bought into that. We had our parents. But way back then, we didn't even have a weight program when I first came. We started making weights out of concrete and cans, right? Yeah.
Wow.
Way back. Wow. I mean, that goes back to the Doolins and the McKinney, Paffords, and going on and on and on. That just jumped right into there and took Woodards, and we just had a sport group that bought into what Coach Tom said at that time.
Yeah, and the community, I mean, even if you didn't have kids playing, you brought the whole community in, all ages. Friday night, that was the only game in town. That was even before the TV show Dallas, as a matter of fact, Coach.
Absolutely. And yes, the community bought in, and they bought into our family that I brought in at that time, and our kids become a part of the program and support family at that time. So great times, great support. You got to have it. You got to have a community.
There came a point in time when you were our coach that you got the local franchise for State Farm Insurance here, moved on from that. But how did that come about, and how were you juggling school duties and State Farm during that period of time for a while?
Well, it was a challenge because I wasn't making the greatest amount of money at that time with 3 kids. So even some with the quarterback club at that time said, "Come," and I was actually working in Brewston in the garment factory over there, part-time, just to make money. And they knew I was struggling a little bit, and some of the quarterback clubs said, "Coach, we don't want you to lose you, but here's an opportunity. Had you thought about becoming a State Farm agent?" And my first words were, "I still love coaching." Yeah, but he said, "What can you do for your family in the long run?" Right? I said, "Well, not sure at this point, but I did accept the State Farm agency and had I think a great career there. Got my whole family involved. My wife was working in it, and some of the students that I had in school worked in the office for me. And I did a part-time. I actually tried to coach, and you can't do both of those, right? So then I had the opportunity. They came to me and said, "You've done a great job here in Camden. Would you like to be a manager with State Farm, move up the ladder?" And I said, "I'm not sure I want to do that. I enjoy the people here. I don't enjoy the community." And my Gordon Parkinson, the guy that was making the sale to me at that time, said, "Boy, it's as much like coaching as you can get into." I said, "I think I'll do that." So I went from coaching teenagers to men and women. Okay, so some of the same. They don't change. It's their mental game. It's their character. It's those things you want from your athlete that could carry over to the business world also. So it was successful there.
How tough was it when it come time to make the decision to move the family, the young family, the friendships, the family you had here, Coach? Mm-hmm. How tough a decision was that for you to just move and resettle near Indianapolis?
Oh, that was tough because my wife Peggy at that time's family was all here, and they thought we were crazy, going north. Where are you going? Freeze to death up there, right? So it was a big pull, and the kids were reluctant at first, of course, but they adapted, and we had a great time. We moved into the Indianapolis area, and the kids were in school there and very successful there, and went on. All are doing just extremely well with their families and with their background. So when you look back on, you never have the opportunity to say, what if? Yeah. You always said, okay, this is a situation. I'm not sure, but I'll make the best of it. And they did. And it was a tough move at that time, Bob. It really was. We loved it here. And
it was another part of growing older, life, and it was a lesson in life, another big lesson in life. Major.
I'm 85 right now, and I look back and say, gosh, where'd those years go? But my mindset is the difference. And when you look at aging, so much of we all age. We can't get past that. I don't like to think I'm old, but I'm aging, all right? We all do that, right? But it's how our mental approach toward that is so critical. And I see it as an opportunity not a challenge. It's a challenge, yes, to be able to move and to do the kind of thing. But I apply those concepts, I think, to the mind that simply says I'm optimistic, I'm positive, I'm continually have self-care, work on my body, I work out continually, and I try to expand my mind by reading and studying, and I stay active. You know, that's the key. Get off the couch and get out there and make some things happen. I don't care if you're 85 or 18, makes no difference, right?
You're still a world record holder in some weightlifting categories?
Well,
Congratulations.
I took my last actually record holding when I was in the 80s, and when I was 79, I told you I was 85, I took the world record in Las Vegas, and in my age bracket, which was 79 to 84 at that time, and I weighed about 225 pounds. I came back in 80 and took an Indiana record. But now, Flash, at 85, I'm down to 200. But there's no competition. Nobody at 85 is competing anymore. So my competition is with myself. Okay? And I laugh and tell this, and because everybody asks, are you still competing? I said, well, I'm still lifting, but I'm not lifting as heavy. So in fact, I could take about every tournament, every competition in the world, and all I need to do is just lift the bar. Don't put any weights on it, because nobody else is lifting, right?
All right.
So that mental and physical and spiritual fitness has been a big part of my being able to. I still run a business full time. I'm coaching, teaching, do Bible studies. I'm active, and I think that's the key for anybody is to keep the mind sharp. Keep the body sharp, keep your spirit sharp, and keep growing. I think that's so critical that we do that. In fact, you'll see on my arm, I have every year I come up with what my motto is for the year, and mine's growth. 1 Corinthians 3:6, God gives us growth.
God gives
we
growth.
We quit growing, there's where we're going to go.
Exactly.
Dying, right?
That's right. That's right.
Go down, right?
Well, I tell you, I can't believe we're halfway through the program, and we need to take a break for our good friends Apex Bank right now. We'll hear this message and be back with more with Coach Tommy Richardson. Stay with us.
Apex Bank of Camden, proudly serving the Benton County community since 1931. In recent years, through growth and expansion, we've taken that same local community spirit into other markets. Today, with over 20,000 customers across Tennessee, our business philosophy remains the same. Local people making local decisions, serving our friends and customers, and investing in the communities that we serve. Here for you yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Apex Bank of Camden, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
And we're back this morning on Operation 7570. Coach Tommy Richardson, longtime friend of ours in our studios today. He's going to be out the granary a little bit later on, and we'll talk about that again before the program concludes. But he had some great football teams back in the 60s, of course, into the early 70s. 1965, Coach, we were undefeated. That record of 11-0, and I'm just looking at the scores and the opponent scores at that time, and my goodness, we scored. I haven't totaled it up, but we scored a lot of opponents that whole 11-game season, and limited the opponents. I think overall in the season looked like they're just about 75, 76 points that we limited our opponents to that year. How did it happen?
Wow, it was a building process, that's for sure. You know, as I mentioned, we talked a little bit earlier, but that first year was we were not anywhere near this good, but we started that building program, and we had great athletes, and we had great coaches, and ever the support of the team, as we talked about, the culture really started to grow, and the players started to believe in themselves. I think there's two things to key in anything that you do. One is your belief that you can do it, and second is the effort that you put into it and expectations that you have, and we really built hard on that we can be this kind of team. And some teams there, as you see, that we'd always been a nemesis. As we look at these, we were able to say, hey, we are able to take them this year, right?
Huntingdon that year defeated Huntingdon by a score of 27-6, or 27-7, I beg your pardon. Then a strong Northside team out of Jackson at that time. We beat Northside that year 7-0, and the list goes on and on. And that, Coach, was in the day. That was in the day when all the schools all across the state of Tennessee, you didn't have them divided up into 4 or 5 different classifications. Everybody, right. I don't care if you were as small as Camden or as large as one of the big schools in Nashville or Memphis, we were all lumped in together, Coach.
Right. Yeah, and that's the reason we had the actually bowl playoffs back then. Now, today, we have the division, as you're talking about, different section. We're in division. In the Zionsville program, we were a Division 5. Now we moved to 6, and it's based on your total number of people in your school, plus what you're doing. If you won 2 sectionals or runner-up, you move up another section. And I showed you the ring early. We've been at Zionsville the last 2 years. We have been state runner-ups in the 5A. Now, because of that, we are moving up to 6A, larger schools, competition a little tougher. So that's, I think we could have won the state if we'd had a state playoff back then.
Do you recall in that particular point in time, we were undefeated 11-0 through the Little Cotton Bowl, defeated Brownsville that year 13-6, but do you recall, were there other undefeated teams across Tennessee at that particular point in time? If there were, there couldn't have been too many.
If there were, I don't remember any, to be honest with you.
All right. But we went to the Little Cotton Bowl, beat a strong Brownsville team. And did you have your choice then of which bowl to go to? Were there a lot of bowl selections back then? You had your choice?
Yeah, there was quite a variety of ones that you could. We wanted, I think, in both of these, but particularly this one, conference, that was the next best team of the conference, to Henderson. But this one, Brownsburg had been in strong team. As you remember, Brownsville football was really strong. So let's take on the best, know. Yeah. So we accepted that over some other bowls to be able to.
Yeah. And I had forgotten, as I look at this, you talk about Henderson up here. This was the Volunteer Conference. Henderson, in regular season, a member of the Volunteer Conference. We defeated 31-19. Then we had a conference playoff again against Henderson again, and we beat them 41-12. I'd forgotten about the playoffs that were taking place at that time, Coach, but very similar scores against Henderson that year, and they had a good team.
They did, yes. And those were good football teams. And this Cone High School out of Nashville was a good football team. I think that's the furthest we had traveled away, and I never will forget that one very quickly because my kids were always at the game. My daughter was a cheerleader, and Bruce, my oldest, was always there, and Brian was always there. And my son fell through the cracks. He was up in the stands in the middle of that game, and he fell, but he always had his helmet on, and he popped off. So they scooped him up, kind of addled, and they brought him to me. His mom did. Peggy brought it to me on the sideline. Here I'm going in at halftime behind probably the Cone and said, "Your son just fell through the stadium." A little anxiety, right? But he's recovered. He's fine. Yeah.
Now, it wasn't in 1965, but I remember a couple of years after that, Coach, we went to what was called the Butter Bowl in Pulaski. That was a great bowl game, too, and I think that was always on Thanksgiving Day, and if you made it up that far into the ranks, you knew everybody in the state, you knew you had one heck of a program.
Yeah, it was, that one was a good one, too. That was a good bowl game, yeah. So we had some great teams, but, there was a lot of factors that go into being in that, and certainly the head coach is a small part of that. It's these other things we talked about. The players wanting to play, the coaches, and I never want to overlook the administration. We had great people behind us, during that period of time. Our principals, our teachers, just total support.
And the classroom experience, of course, what were the classroom assignments you had? I know biology, because I had you as a biology teacher as a sophomore, but what were your classroom assignments out there during those days, Coach?
Biology, history, and physical education. Those were the 3 that I was involved in. And that was another thing, kind of different coming from the Florida program. As a phys ed teacher, I was able to do wrestling as a part of phys ed. We did track. I understand they have a track team here now, right?
They do, yes, sir. Good one.
Well, we ran around the tires around the football field, so we were very fundamental but we got kids introduced to those kind of things, and because I was a phys ed teacher, I was able to do that during their phys ed period.
Now, when you got established up near Indianapolis with State Farm, of course, coaching in your background, and it did not take long for those school officials up there to realize your talent, your abilities, and how did you get to be involved with some high schools up there, Coach?
Well, I was gave what time I could, even though I was working with State Farm. And it might be a presentation that I was making to the players, talking about sports psychology, mental aspect. And that was the beginning of it. But then when I retired with State Farm, then I came back and came back to Zionsville and started coaching full-time at the Zionsville High School. And I've always worked the defense, other than being a head coach, and I was a defensive line coach and did the mental training, did leadership training and development, very involved. And at that time we had the Fellowship of Christian Athletes within the organization. So that kind of led from there to the next stop. I left Zionsville and went to Traders Point Academy. That was a small school, had a great program, great culture developed there for 3 years. And then I went back to Zionsville, and I've been back there 2 years now, and working the same type of program, defense, mental training, that sort of thing. Then I switched over, started coaching rugby.
Tell me about that.
That's an interesting one. It's kind of a blend of football and soccer. Those two together, a lot of football characteristics. And I didn't know a thing about them, but they brought me in as a mental coach, and I started working with them mentally and doing training for the athletes and the coaches. And I learned a little bit about it, but I'm not full-time with that. I spend time each week. I go out on a Monday with them, usually Monday or Wednesday, and spend some time putting in a character trait of the week. We may be studying loyalty this week, and I teach and train on that. And we work that week. Next week I'll come back with something, depending upon the needs of the team. So I have a chance to stay involved with that part of it. So I enjoy that.
Things you have learned in business through the years, Coach, they complement what you teach on the football field, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. What you teach on the football field, it complements and comes back and helps you as a businessman.
Oh my gosh. I love leadership is one of the areas I do a lot of training and workshops and seminars on, and I've studied leadership at every level. And I still enjoy seeing the traits that you learn in an athletic program and how they carry over into the business world. And I think one of the things key that I talk about, it's the people, not the profits, people, not the production. Study your people, get good people skills, train and develop the people around you, and you can be successful in any business. You can't do it alone. Nobody does it alone. And the building as a CEO of a company, if I'm working and developing my people, and then helping them to develop, then I've got a good route to being successful in what I'm doing.
Well, as you go through life, sometimes life throws things at us, heartaches at us that we'd rather not have. And I know you lost a loving, devoted wife back around 95 then, and family still young in those days. How did you move forward? The grief is still there, I understand that, Coach, but how do you move forward from that? And what would be your advice to someone, with the loss of a loved one now, to carry on and to think, that, this is tough, but we've got to move forward?
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to something that I mentioned early. We win and we learn. And I think when you lose somebody, the grieving process is very important. And that's what we all need to go through. We don't want to lose someone very, very important to us. But we look back and say, what can I learn from that? How can I be better because of that incident in my life? Not worse, not discouraged, not disappointed, that's a short time thing. But then look and say, hey, I want to be of value because I can make that person that passed away that I lost, make her life more important to those that are surrounding me. So the ability to take the mental aspect of what can I learn from that and how can I grow in that process is the critical thing. And that's how we handle adversity in life. We learn and we grow, right?
And there was a point in time you met another fine young lady out there,
absolutely.
And
yes.
right there, and just having a wonderful life today, Coach.
Right. Yes, it's been a blessing. Really has.
And there come a point in your life when you wrote a book a few years ago called Building to Excellence right now. Building to Excellence, a guide to building authentic success. I've got a copy of it with me right now. How did the book come about for you? And,
well,
do you have a future as a writer on down the road then?
I'm tempted to do something on an update on that. But I think the basic concept is we all are given so much potential in life, and if we are building to excellence, we're being as good as we can be. I think that's the key. John Wooden, the great coach from UCLA, which coaches all know and understand his method of coaching, he simply said, that is success. Success is a peace of mind, knowing that you've done the best to become the best that you can be. That's excellence. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not necessarily successful. You can be at the top of the ladder, and you can certainly not be excellent because you are not using the great talents that you've been given to be as good as you can be.
The fella, let's see, tell me about the fella that co-wrote the book with you, Jack right here.
Jack,
another great guy you met up in Indianapolis.
Absolutely. That's a State Farm contact that I made when I was State Farm. He was an agent working in my area, and I saw the great development, how sharp he was, and we kind of put our heads together when I retired with State Farm full-time and said, hey, let's do some workshops, seminars. We'd still do that. It's a company called Synergy Training. Synergy is a whole that's greater than the parts, kind of the concept that I've talked about. We got to have everybody else around us to be as good as we can be. And we started looking at his experience in the business world, mine in both athletics and business, and said, hey, we do what's called the 5 Ds in there. Very interesting. I teach that when I coach people, one-on-one or groups. And the 5 Ds to be excellent, not perfect, not necessarily perfect, not even number one, right? But if I'm going as far as I can, then I'm excellent. And that's what I need to look back on. Am I growing? My word here, am I growing and becoming as good as I can be? But those 5 Ds, I give them to you very quickly, okay? I live by them. Number one is desire. I got to have a passion. I got to want it. You can't pour it into somebody. It's got to come from there. Okay. The second D is I got to have a sense of direction. That's a goal. I'm very strictly goal-oriented, right? Sense of purpose and value and vision and where I'm going. That's the second D. The third D, I've got to have the discipline to do it, doing what needs to be done, whether I want to do it or not. And that's where a lot of people fall off. I know what I want and I like to do it. I got a path, but I'm not going to put in the effort, okay? The fourth D is called dedication to developing myself and the others around me. And that last D is determination to hang in there when I go and get stuff.
Absolutely. Well, being here in our studios today, it reminds me, even before I got involved with the radio around 71, 72, Coach, it reminds me of listening to you and maybe Charlie Baylor on Saturday mornings at our old studios, maybe Ron Lane when you would just come in and recap the Friday night ball game then. And, of course, back in those days, we weren't doing live broadcast, and we didn't have the capability then. But, we were doing a replay of it, and then you or some of the coaching staff would come in and just talk about the game then. And there were more good things, more good wins than there were losses in those days. I remember listening, Coach.
Oh, yes. Great days. I enjoyed it. Look back on them. Yeah.
Great times. And
35 years of coaching.
Wow.
This is some of the best 8 years I've had at 35.
And you've had, as we talk about, of course, we could talk about the players, the Sturdivants, the McKelveys, the Doolans, of course, the Woodards, the names goes, Reeds, the names goes on and on. I know I've left somebody out I should have mentioned, but those were great days, and not just the players, the parents you mentioned. You had some great staff. You had some great staff members in those days when staff was limited.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We had maybe 4 or 5. We'd pick up a couple of volunteer players that helped us back then. But, as I think back, Don Williams, remember Don?
Yes, sir,
here.
absolutely.
He'd been in Jackson, right here, Bucky, John Bucky. Okay, yeah. We had so many others that worked with us very, very closely here. So, yes, we had a great coaching staff, and definitely it was a good time.
And some great volunteers that we talked about as well, not just actual staff members from the school, but I remember folks like Milton Trout, I think, worked with you some, Turney Orr, folks like that.
Oh, yep, yeah, we sure did. That's great support.
Yep. Coach, as you know, it's graduation time, and these kids who are graduating from Camden, Big Sandy, and surrounding area in the next few days, graduation at Camden to Big Sandy next Friday, they're embarking on a big career. They're about to become young men, young women out there. So as they get ready after graduation next Friday night or whenever it is, Coach, what's your advice? What's your advice to this generation coming on now as they prepare for college, military, whatever it might be?
2 things. Find your passion. What do you love to do? And it's not the money you make. Sometimes that's a factor, and it has to be, but what do you really love doing? And secondly, from that, what is your sense of purpose? Why are you moving into that career area? It's got to be more than all about me. It's what I can do for others. I think the question we all have to answer when we get ready to pass on from this world is not what did I do, but what did I do for others? And if you can get into that career path that will give you that opportunity to enjoy your passion with a sense of purpose, and then the third thing, of course, certainly is what can I do for others? I think they're on the right path. And it could be anything, but don't jump just for the dollars and cents. I think that's a major mistake that people make.
And as
that doesn't bring happiness.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate those fine words of advice. And Coach, let's again talk about what's taking place in just a little bit out at the Granary Restaurant in just a little while from right now when we finish up. And, you'd like to see everybody. I know there's going to be some foreign players of yours out there, some more, but anybody can come out and hear you in just a little bit, Coach.
Love to have anybody. We'll start gathering here about 10 o'clock. I think they'll start coming in, and we'll have a good hour at least of sharing and talking and getting to read. And some of these players, are not in contact with each other, so it's a good opportunity for them to do that. But any of our people that were part of our culture here and following us are welcome to be there. We'll probably stay around until lunchtime, and then some will stay for lunch. But just a chance to meet and greet and enjoy each other. And I appreciate some of the efforts that all in the area have been making to get the word out on it. So we'll have a good, and particularly thanks to you and help us in that process. And Cliff's been a big part of that, and Brent Smith and Dave Markham and others have been getting the word out, and we really appreciate that.
Well, we're looking forward to being out there in just a little bit. And as we close the program, a word in closing, Coach Tommy Richardson.
Well, I just want to say thanks to you, Flash, and the opportunity to share with you some of the great times that we've had here in Camden the years ago, and the fact that the concept that we talk and tried to share with our players and people involved. These men have gone forward, some of them 60 years, and I hope they're still using some of the things that we worked on back then, and I know they are. I'm proud of all of them, and just proud of the opportunity to be a part and back here in Benton County again. It's been a good visit.
By the way, do you have a web page out there, Facebook page, where we can find more about you?
Yep.
This book, Building to Excellence, is it still in print? Can we go up Amazon somewhere and find it, Coach?
Yeah, Amazon. It's on there. Actually, the best way to get a hold of me is go to my email, TommyBRichardson@gmail.com. TommyBRichardson@gmail.com. I do have some website, but I haven't kept those up to date like I should, because I'm doing a lot of networking is a way that I really work my business today. Talking to people, sharing thoughts and ideas, and about a lot of different things. Maybe sometime I would come back and do a talk if there's interested. I talk about what's called the blue zones, and the concept is how to live longer and enjoy it more. The quality of life determines sometimes the length of life. And the length of life does not entirely tell you how great the life will be. And how do we put those two together? It's an interesting concept based on a guy in his 80s. Okay.
Coach, it's been an honor. Thank you so much. Great friendship down through the years. Thank you for what you've meant to Camden Central High School and surrounding area for so many, many years. My best to you and all your family, and we're looking forward to seeing you just a little bit out at the Granary. And God bless. Come back anytime.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Look forward to seeing everybody out there this morning.
That's our program, ladies and gentlemen. Our thanks to Coach Tommy Richardson for being our guest on Operation 7570. Thanks to our sponsors, our great friends at Apex Bank. Thanks to Luke Crutchfield, our producer this morning. Stay tuned next as Luke will be here with the bargain auction. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday morning.
For more than 85 years, Apex Bank of Camden has built